Morning, everyone. It is 7 o'clock, so let's get this party started. Yeah, tonight we're going to talk about something really fun. We are going to talk about my first deer ever. That's right. So, episode 1, this is Jay's Days, episode 3 that we're doing tonight. So, in episode 1, I told you about my first buck that I ever shot. And then last week in episode 2, I told you about the lovely church bells we get every week as well. I should start at 7:01. So last week we talked about, I told you guys kind of about how I grew up, a background of me a little bit, how I got my first BB gun when I was 4 years old, and then a pellet rifle when I turned 5, so that I had an opportunity to start working my marksmanship at a really young age. And I actually got pretty good at shooting stuff, and that really led me into a world where I have just been in love with shooting since I was a little boy. And at this point, I just don't, there's nothing else I want to do in life except shoot, and I love it, and it's so much fun. So tonight we are going to talk about my first deer ever. This is episode 3, Jay's Days. I can't tell you the year. I could. I'm not going to. Mid-80s. Deer season, Michigan. Near Thanksgiving. And I forgot to turn off the notification noises on my phone. All right. Sorry about that. Crash. Okay, so a couple people still hanging out with me. Sorry for those technical difficulties. So anyway, mid-80s, Thanksgiving time, we are out hunting with a whole bunch of people from church. And the weather was nice for a November day around Thanksgiving. Cold, a little bit of snow here and there. Most of it had melted off out in the open, and there's a little bit of snow around the edges of the woods. And here in Michigan, we do some deer drives when we get later into the season and we need to get some deer moving around, fill some tags. So we'll go into little wood lots, and we'll send a few guys in there to walk through there and kick out any deer that are in there. And then when the deer come out the other side of the woods, we have a couple of people that we call standers, and those are the 2 or 3 people, depending on the size of the wood lot, that are actually allowed to shoot at the deer. The people who are pushing the woods, who are walking through the woods, are not allowed to shoot, right? For safety purposes, we don't want anybody shooting at each other or towards anything. So we had pushed 2 separate wood lots this day. It was actually the day after Thanksgiving. Now I recall that. It was the day after Thanksgiving. And we had pushed a couple of wood lots, and we had taken one deer. One of the guys in our group had shot a nice 7-point and filled his tag there. So we got to this last wood lot, and I was a younger fella, and so I was just staying with my dad. And so my dad and I had gone and walked through the woods. We were pushers that day. We'd gone and walked through the woods and pushed the deer, and a bunch of deer had come out. The guys were shooting at them, but didn't hit anything. And then we all convened out in the field at the end of the woods after we had finished pushing it. We walked down this long fence row that was probably about 400 yards from this wood lot back to a big drainage ditch. And that's where the cars were parked and stuff, was way down by the drainage ditch at another set of woods that we had pushed earlier. So we're about maybe halfway down this fence row heading back towards our cars, and somebody hollers, "Deer!" So we look back, and there's a couple of deer coming out across the field. And back in the 80s, some of you may recall, if you're my age or older, we didn't have separate doe permits from buck permits back then. You got to buy one deer license, and then you applied for what was called then a hunter's choice permit. And that hunter's choice permit actually gave you an opportunity to use your tag to shoot a doe. If most people would hunt till the end of the season, till the last few days, and if they hadn't filled their tag, then they would shoot a doe. And that's actually where the saying, for me anyway, Back in those days, they say if it's brown, it's down. And that was kind of in reference to, hey, we got to fill a tag. So, we'll shoot anything these last couple of days, just to fill the tag. Well, anyway, out in this field, here came a couple of big deer, and everybody's looking at them. Guys pull up their binoculars, they're checking them out. Well, no bucks, but we did have, Dad and I had hunter's choice permits, which gave us the opportunity to shoot a doe. You could shoot a doe and use your tag with the hunter's choice permit to tag a doe. So as we stood there watching these deer come across the field, my dad's looking out there and he says, "Oh, they're too far. We can't shoot them anyway. They're too far." And I said, "Well, give me a try. I want to try it." He says, "Well, I don't think that's a good idea, right? That's probably not very safe. Not safe. That's not what he said. He said, that's too long of a shot. That's not going to be a really good shot for you with that old shotgun." So let me preface that with, I didn't have my own shotgun yet, and what Dad had given me was this really old goose gun. He called it the goose gun. I don't remember exactly, but I believe it was a Stevens, really heavy barrel. 28-inch long barrel, which is why he called it the goose gun. Had a bead on the end of it. The forearm actually wouldn't stay locked in place. It was a single shot, and the forearm wouldn't stay locked in place. So the forearm was actually taped onto the barrel, held in place with some electrical tape. So when you look down the vent rib on the barrel to see the bead, you could actually see that little hump of electrical tape that was on top of it. And that's the gun I was using. Now, I thought I was a pretty good shot, so I'm begging Dad, "Please let me shoot." He's like, "No, that's too far." I said, "Let me just try. Let me take one shot." So he finally broke down and he said, "Okay, if you really think that you can do it," he's like, "I'll let you take one shot." So I got up to the fence row and leaned against this post, got my gun set up there nice and solid. I got a good rest on top of this fence post, and I pulled the hammer back, and I'm looking down that bead, and I look back at my dad and I said, "You're right, that's a long ways. The bead covers the whole deer." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm just going to aim high because that's a long ways and let that slug just drop into place." And he says, "All right, we'll give it a try." So I bared down on that thing, and I went back and forth, and I'm going up and down with the gun, and I'm watching that bead cover the deer, go below the deer, go back up, and I'm just trying to gauge how much drop this thing's going to have at a long distance. That was pretty close to 200 yards. I'm not recommending that anyone else do this. I'm just telling you what I did. So I finally decide, all right, I'm just going to go straight up that front leg. I'm going to get my height. I'm going to put the top of this bead right up at the top of her head height. And that should be just enough for that bullet to just drop right in there, for that slug to drop right in there. So I finally decided I was ready. I was nervous. I was shaking. I'd never shot a deer before. All right, this is my first deer ever. I've never shot a deer before, and I was shaking from excitement, right? So finally I get there, and I pull that thing up, and I pull the trigger, and boom! And we're watching and waiting, and that slug hit that doe perfectly. She took about 3 steps and turned and looked at us, and then turned around like she was going to run back to the woods and fell over right there in the middle of the field. And everybody started hooting and hollering, "Woo! Oh my gosh!" Nobody could believe it. I couldn't believe it. That was probably one of the longest shots of my entire life. And I'll admit now that it may not have been the most ethical thing to do at the time, because there's a chance I probably could have wounded the deer instead of killing it. But the Lord was with me. He guided that slug. He knew it was my time, and he just took that thing right in there, and I nailed her right in the heart. She spun around, was dead on her feet, and she was laying 15 feet from where I had shot her. So that was my first deer ever. I was so excited. Never been more excited in my entire life before that. It was just the absolute greatest feeling. And from that moment on, I never missed any moment that I could possibly get out in the woods. And to this day, if I have any time to get out in the woods, people ask me a lot, "Hey, what's the best time to go deer hunting?" And I give them the same answer every time. Anytime that you have, right? If it's 11 o'clock in the morning, if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if it's hot and sunny, if there's a heavy wind, if it's raining, it does not matter. The deer live out there, right? So the best time to deer hunt is whenever you can get out there. It's actually best if you don't go at the same time every day, because then you're patterning yourself. The deer are patterning you, and they know when you're going to be there, and they don't want to hang around. Wow, mosquitoes are heavy again tonight. This will end soon with Mosquitoville. So, thank you all for joining me tonight. That's the story of my first ever deer. Was a beautiful, big, mature doe. Put the family in venison for a while, and like I said, I was super excited. And the following year, I shot my first buck, and you already know that story because that was Jay's Days episode 1, was my first ever buck. And I was just so excited. Wanted to make sure I shared that with you guys. So, believe in yourself, trust yourself, be faithful, and your bullets will go where you want them to. I've killed a lot of deer over the years. I probably should have written them all down. I don't even think I can add them up. As the years went by, we got into the later 90s and the early 2000s, and laws changed, hunting licenses changed to where you could shoot 2 bucks, and then you could shoot a doe, and then you could, some years you could buy 5 doe permits, some years you could buy 10 doe permits, and that's all continued to evolve as we've gone through the years. We have had some people probably take too many, and at the same time we've had some people that have bought licenses and not filled any of them because they're too picky, maybe. But nonetheless, I'm not going to get all political about how you hunt. I just want to encourage every one of you to get out and hunt. It's absolutely awesome being out in God's country, being out in the woods, being out in the wilderness, just experiencing nature is absolutely the most grand thing. I love it. I can't even say anything better about it. There's so many things to see out there. So many exciting things happen. So many different wild animals and so many different experiences. And all of that goes right in here, right? That's all memories. And you can't take away memories. Memories stay with you forever. The success of a hunt is judged on many different things, not necessarily what you harvest. Of course, getting a huge monster buck is fun, but it's not something that happens every year. It's not something that happens all the time. And being able to just get out and enjoy nature and be part of it and be out there helping with the conservation of wildlife, and especially here in Michigan, as over the years we've lost habitat, it's especially important for all of us to get out there and do the best that we can to help conserve and take care of nature and preserve that wildlife and that heritage and that tradition that we have. So thank you all for joining me tonight. Thank you all for being here. I love each and every one of you. Special prayers for all of those who are going through anything difficult right now. Prayers for my mama, who is fighting stage 4 lung cancer right now. She's probably watching this, I would assume. Just wanted to make sure that I give a shout out there. The Lord blesses us every day. We need to recognize that, accept it, and live our lives fully, and He will take care of us. I believe that. Thank you all for joining me. This has been episode 3 of Jay's Days, my first ever deer. You all take care. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you again soon. Have a great night. Shoot straight. Keep the fire going.